with 5 seconds. He's going to throw it. Howard leaps. He has it. Touchdown. Carolina back from the dead to tie the game with 2 seconds to go. Snap back, spot down. The kick is cleanly away. It is good.
And it's
with
yes,
a 54-yard field goal. And how about them Tar Heels? They do it.
Here's Kupak. Gives off to Amos. He's got it. He's Unbelievable. Unreal.
Jordan back to kick. It's blocked again. Picked up. It'll be a touchdown, Carolina, for Bracey Walker. He blocked his second punt and scores his second touchdown of the season. It's 14-13. Mr. Jordan beat Mr. Walker. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
This is the Heel Tough Blog Podcast on Spreaker.com.
Hey guys, and welcome into this edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's Anthony Pagnotta with you guys as always, and I'm joined by Josh Marlowe. Yeah, it's been a little bit, but he's still around, and we're still doing this thing. We close in on spring, believe it or not, somewhat right around the corner here. Just about 3 months away now, just under 3 months away until the spring game. So spring camp will start up a little bit earlier than that. So I'm assuming that the excitement is starting to build a little bit for you. I understand it's still basketball season, and of course we still do the Roy's Boys podcast. But, football, I think for the first time in a while is starting to creep into people's minds in the middle of January.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely started to think about it a little bit, fully engaged in basketball season, really looking forward to baseball season, and then of course, there's football.
Good one. Good one.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the first time since the 11-3 year that in January there's positive energy around the program.
Right. Well, and remember that year we were coming off a 6-7 season, so really...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess going into 2016 maybe a little, but again, we were going through, another quarterback battle. People were still questioning if Larry Fedora could win big games. So yeah, I mean, there seems to be a lot of excitement though. I mean, Lee Pace wrote an article today for GoHeels.com, and he said this is the most excitement he's seen in a long, long time.
It's simply the Mack Brown effect. It's the big reason why you hired him. Was because no matter what, there's going to be something maybe coming out every day about Carolina football that is very minor, like let's say the spring game, which we'll get to later, but Mack Brown, who the game passed him by and all this other crap, understands what it could be used for, and so even with the minor stuff, there's just a lot of positive energy. He's re-energized really the whole campus with some other coaches talking about the vibe that they've seen with him hosting recruits and stuff like that. Right. So this is the positive things of getting Mack Brown to take the job.
Yeah, old grandpa is up there whooping some ass on the recruiting trail right now, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, Mack gets his staff finalized just before the meeting that they had on Thursday. Of course, we will, we will all remember Tim Cross with the emotional speech. Let's get this work. Really pumped the guys up, so that seemed to be, a successful first meeting. But right before that, he gets the staff finalized, so everybody is in place. And we'll go through the guys here in just a minute, but I first want to talk about Stacy Searles, who's going to be the offensive line coach. And if you guys don't know, of course, in the offseason, Chris Kapilovic did not return to Carolina. He was the offensive line coach and co-offensive coordinator for the Heels since Seth Luttrell's department after the 2016 season. So he had been there in that role for the last 2 seasons. He moves on now at Colorado, and we brought in Brandon Jones, the offensive line coach from Texas Tech. He ends up, being on the job for a couple of weeks. He was there a few weeks ago when Mack Brown introduced everybody during the Gonzaga game to the student section and all of the fans that were in attendance for that game. But he ends up going and taking a job as the offensive line coach with Dana Holgerson when he moves on from West Virginia and goes to Houston. So that job freed up. Stacy Searles, the offensive line coach at Miami, was let go as part of the entire offensive staff that was let go at Miami. So he was a free agent, and it seemed like, a good fit overall because Mack Brown had worked with them from 2011 to 2013. The numbers for him, not flawless. He did have some issues when it came to protecting the passer, 1 year in specific, which was his first year in Austin. But, he did have a couple of years where he was relatively successful. The 2012 season when Texas really did have a pretty good offense with David Ash. That was the one time that, David Ash, it is, went off and kind of established himself. I think we all remember that, where they thought he was going to be one of the better quarterbacks in college football, and that never really panned out. But for the most part, I think the numbers are relatively proven. The best thing about Stacy Searles, look at the guys that he's worked under. He worked under Nick Saban at LSU, worked under Les Miles at LSU, Mark Richt at Georgia, went and worked under Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, and now is going to work under Mack Brown after working for him in that 2011 to 13 span that we just talked about. So when you see this, a guy like Stacy Searles who has as experienced of a background as he does, is this, there seemed to be some concern, mostly from Miami fans who said that he did have some trouble protecting the passer. What did you think of the hire when you saw that he was officially going to be the new offensive line coach?
I didn't mind it. I know Miami fans, had concerns about their offensive line and the amount of sacks they allowed and all this other stuff. We also had a quarterback who failed to get rid of the ball on time and would hold the ball and take sacks. Look, this guy's coached with arguably the best coaches in the sport in his career. Les Miles, Nick Saban, Frank Beamer, now Mack Brown again. If he wasn't qualified, I don't think Mack Brown would have given him the phone call. It makes a lot of sense because he's coaching the ACC, understands the footprint, the recruiting, the kind of offensive line play you have to have in this conference, because it varies from conference to conference based on the style of plays. Like the Big 12, they're a little bit smaller because they play a lot faster. The SEC a little bit bigger because the defensive line is so big in that conference, where this conference is a little bit different. Because you got, Clemson on another level, because they're pretty much an SEC team in the ACC.
Yep.
And then everyone else is just, you got some teams that play really, really fast, so they're a little bit smaller, and you got some guys that really want to be a little bit bigger because they're going to want to run the ball. So I think over time, this offensive line graded out by Pro Football Focus, not that bad in the ACC, whereas to you or my eyes, we didn't look that good on paper. So there's talent here, and I really think, the things at Miami, he'll correct, because I think Mack Brown, we're going to run a different offense a little bit, so it's going to be a different offensive line play.
Yeah, no, overall, I thought the line was average, maybe a little bit above average. I thought the exterior of the offensive line was much better than the interior. Both William Sweet and Charlie Heck graded out pretty well, and I understand that. I thought they both had very good seasons. I think that Charlie Heck returning is huge. Of course, William Sweet will go to the NFL, but Charlie Heck is a guy that I really like, and I think they're going to keep him at right tackle. I wouldn't mind if they moved him to left tackle either, to protect what will probably be the blind side of our quarterback this year, considering the three favorites at the quarterback position are right-handed quarterbacks. So I wouldn't mind seeing him move there. Again, I also thought Billy Ross was a guy that kind of evolved into his role and really played well. Loved the body size on him. And then one of the interesting things that I saw, and this could be something to keep an eye on, Nick Polino might be moving to center this year, which I think could help him just a little bit. I think, with the, being at guard, having the, to line up against some of these more athletic defensive tackles, or even at times having to take on 5 technique defensive ends in 3-4 systems, I think that really bothered him a little bit. You saw it early on in the season against the team that ran a 3-4 in Cal, and he really didn't have the greatest game. So maybe putting him at center, allowing him to kind of control what's going on the offensive line, I think that might help him a little bit. And, this offensive line overall, I think, does have some really good talent. I don't doubt that at all. And, I think at this point, Searles is a veteran guy that can come in and really brings a lot to the table. And you mentioned it. He's coached for 3 surefire Hall of Famers, right? Mack Brown's already in. Frank Beamer will be in. And Nick Saban, I mean, he's the pinnacle of coaching in college football. And then Les Miles, I mean, he may end up eventually getting.
He won 80% of his games in the SEC. He deserves to be the
right,
Hall of
and
Famer.
he's coming back to Kansas. If he makes a bowl game with Kansas, they should just stop it right there and put him in. That would be amazing. So, he's coached under some unbelievable coaches. It's going to be interesting because, look, he's going to be coaching an offensive line group that will now have to be prepared for an air raid offense. I think that might be a little bit interesting to see how he's able to handle that. But if he can handle that, and I think he might be able to, then we're going to be okay. But I'm with you. I think, the hire overall was solid. I don't think it was overwhelmingly encouraging. It wasn't like we went out there and landed someone from Alabama or from Michigan staff that got let go. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good hire. So, I mean, when you look at the overall hires, and we'll go through them, you got Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach. You'll have Robert Gillespie returning as the running backs coach. Wide receivers coach will be Lonnie Galloway, who comes over from Louisville. You have Tim Brewster, the tight ends coach and the recruiting coordinator, also the assistant head coach. He'll coach tight ends. So, he's done some sensational stuff already on the recruiting trail, and easily one of the he's definitely a guy that fires fans up on Twitter. He does not shy away from the trash talk. Offensive line coach, like we just talked about, Stacy Searles. You head to the defensive side of the ball. You'll have co-defensive coordinators. Jay Bateman comes over from Army. He'll be a co-defensive coordinator and also coach safeties. You'll have Tommy Thigpen, who will be a co-defensive coordinator alongside Bateman, coach the linebackers. And then you'll bring along with him the defensive line coach, Tim Cross, who comes over from Air Force. Dre Bly comes in as the cornerbacks coach, of course, a guy that was a former Tar Heel, kind of been in the Charlotte area for a while, has a pretty good recruiting footprint here already. And then you look at Scott Boone, who will come in as the special teams guy, as well as the outside linebackers coach, a couple other guys that will come in as the graduate assistants. I don't remember their exact name. Sparky Woods is one of them, and then I'm blanking on the other guy. But he'll have two guys that will be special assistants to the head coach as well. I mean, when you look at this group of guys that they're bringing in, I mean, who was the hire to you that really excited you the most this
Mack
offseason?
Brown? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, outside of Mack Brown, the Mack Brown hire. Okay,
just wanted to be
play the game right here. Okay, come on,
Brewster, because you can just see the immediate impact he's had. You can tell this man has a lot of respect for Mack Brown. I mean, he left A&M to come here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a big believer that A&M's a premier program, and I believe Jimbo Fisher is going to win big at that program.
Right.
And he left there, football, a football state, a football school, to come be an assistant at a basketball school and a football program that's trying to build itself back up. And he's done an immediate job on the recruiting trail. He's worked his ass off. He trolled NC State there after we won over there in basketball. So that got a lot of love from the fans. So he's probably the clear-cut favorite because he's made the most immediate impact since he's been on campus. Because he got hired and went straight to work. So, and then probably second, I think Dre Bly, if the corners actually are successful,
right,
and we get better play in the secondary, because he's a Tar Heel, he's going to go a really long way with this fan base because that's something big with the basketball program. And hopefully we can get that with the football program, even with a guy like Tommy Thigpen who did play here. Mm-hmm. If we get better play from the linebackers and the defense overall, then these are going to turn out to be really, really great hires and then retainers by Mack Brown.
Yeah, I think one of the best things really quickly, because I just kind of thought of this as you were saying this, you look on the defensive side of the ball, and they've got two defensive coordinators. They're going to have co-defensive coordinators. Remember, we had co-offensive coordinators the last couple of years, but here's what they do. You get the co-defensive coordinator in Jay Bateman who comes in. Remember, he's been a full-time defensive coordinator, and he's going to coach safeties. But you have Dre Bly back there who will coach cornerbacks, but can also coach safeties if he needs to. And then you're going to have a similar situation with Tommy Thigpen, who will also be the co-defensive coordinator. But alongside him, you'll have Scott Boone, who coached linebackers at Arizona. And remember, a couple of years ago when he was there, they had a guy in Scooby Wright who, kind of came out of nowhere and was a really great player, made all Pac-12, actually was an All-American at one time. So he's got somewhat of a proven track record as a linebackers coach. What they did there was they got guys around them that can help if needed, if they have to focus on being a defensive coordinator. They never did that when they had co-offensive coordinators. They were always just relying on guys to handle two jobs at one time. So I think Mack Brown knows that and did a really great job of making sure that he got those right hires in there. And I mean, look at Scott Boone. He's going to handle special teams and coaching the outside linebacker. So he does a lot. The guy that I really like, one that's probably not talked about a lot is Lonnie Galloway. I think he did a sensational job at Louisville. His track record is proven. He's coached in air raid offenses before. And, he's already starting to show that he's had somewhat of an impact. He was the main recruiter at Louisville for Ty Murray, who ends up flipping his commitment to Carolina. I think he's really helping. And, I really think that he's going to make a difference in this wide receiving core. They went out there and right after Lonnie Galloway got hired, they brought in Shoffrey Brown. Emory Simmons flips his commitment back to Carolina. I really think that Lonnie Galloway has had a fantastic impact early on. And believe me, it's tough not to go with Tim Brewster because Tim Brewster is, he's got to get Tar Heel fans fired up. I don't think the man sleeps ever. He is literally always somewhere recruiting somebody. But Lonnie Galloway is just a guy that really excites me and I think can really bring some life back into this wide receiving core that, no offense, lacked a little bit last year, but is somewhat expected considering that Luke Paschal is still a very young coach. And I think going to UMass for Luke Paschal will be good for him. Coaching at a smaller school under Walt Bell, who's going to be a guy that is similar to him, actually coached under Larry Fedora, and, is a young guy. I think he can build himself down there where, at Carolina, it was just such a huge step up for him. Right after a guy in Gunter Brewer, who was a fantastic wide receivers coach, is doing a great job actually in Philadelphia with the Eagles right now in the NFL. And, I think Lonnie Galloway can really re-energize this wide receiving group. But, I really liked all the hires for the most part. I think one of the keys that we heard from everybody, and I think we believed it ourselves, was that the key to Mack Brown's second tenure in Chapel Hill was what kind of staff did he hire around him. And, I don't know about you. I'm pretty happy with the staff that he's got in place.
Yeah, we all knew going in that the staff he was able to bring in was going to be very important. Mm-hmm. More so than maybe it was when he was here the first time, just because the game is completely different, the recruiting landscape is completely different. And he was a man of his word. He said, "I'm going to hire a great staff," and that's what he did. We don't know the details of their money. I would bet you that we're paying them a little bit better than we were paying when we had Butch Davis and Larry Fedora here.
I'd be willing to bet that.
Who had decent staffs, but to win at this level and the way he wants to win, look how much Clemson's paying their coordinators. I'm not saying we got to fork out that kind of money, but if you want to have great coaches, you got to pay them what they're worth. And so I think that was the first step. And every guy that talked in the meeting talked about the respect they had for Mack Brown. I'm not going to say the guys didn't respect Larry or didn't respect Butch, but they were never as open with the respect as they are for Mack Brown. A lot of the, Dre Blah, this is his first big-time coaching job. You're at your alma mater.
The only coaching job that he's had is as a high school defensive backs coach. He coached at Myers Park back in 2016. And so, but you're right. And you could tell just how much it meant for him to get that opportunity. Tim Cross literally saying, how great it is to work with Mack Brown. He gives him a chance at a big-time program, something he never thought he would get.
Yeah.
And you hear Tim Brewster saying, look, I left Texas A&M to work for this man because he's Mack Brown. I wouldn't leave for anyone else.
It's a lot like how the staff that Roy Williams has, how they feel about him, and then even the guys that have even left, they still feel the same way, that it's an honor to work with a Hall of Fame guy, the guy that knows what it takes to win national championships and conference championships. So I'm very impressed. The big key moving forward is, can we retain him? If there is success, because we've always struggled with that since Mack Brown left, when we've been decent or we win 11 games. Someone's leaving because someone's going to pay them more money because they did a really good job with players that, in the national landscape weren't very good. So that's going to be the thing is if we are successful and we win, 8 or 9 games,
right?
Some of these, like a Tim Cross or like, someone else that, if there's improved defensive play or the wide receiver position takes off again, someone's going to want that guy. So the question will be then, can we retain him? But yeah, this staff is probably the best staff we've seen as Tar Heel football fans.
Yeah, and one of the big things that they're doing right now is hitting the recruiting trail, and we'll kind of turn to this recruiting weekend that we just had. We had a sizable group of guys on campus, most of them from the 2019 class taking their official visits, a lot of the late signing period targets. As you guys know, you have the early signing period. Carolina signed 19 players, 6 of them enrolled. We'll tell you a little bit about those guys later on in the show. During a new segment that we'll do at the end. But, I think one of the main things, it seemed like all of the recruits that were on campus, especially the 2020 guys, really loved what they saw from Carolina. A guy in Moose Muhammad that's been, was offered by Larry Fedora, and yes, the son of the former Carolina Panther wide receiver Muhsin Muhammad. Him, along with a defensive back, Keontae Jenkins from up in the Chesapeake area of Virginia, and I'm trying to pronounce his name right. I think it's Naki Meredith. There were 3 of them. All of these guys, they were pretty much hanging out the entire visit, and they really seemed to love everything that they saw from Carolina. And that's huge because a lot of these guys had been on campus before, and you didn't really see that with Larry. You saw guys that would go on campus and say, look, I'm visiting today, but that was really it. Meanwhile, after this one, you saw these guys wanting to post all these different pictures. Saw the same thing, Trenton Simpson, the outside linebacker from Mallard Creek High School right here in Charlotte. He seemed to really enjoy his visit as well. And, I mean, overall, you've just seen the landscape in just a few months change around Carolina. People really seem to be taking well to Mack Brown. And I think that showed this weekend. And then you get the flip of the offensive guard, Ty Murray. He ends up flipping from Louisville. Again, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, Lonnie Galloway was a guy that was really closely tied with him. Stacey Searles believe it or not, did not have a relationship with him. He was not offered by Miami, unless that just wasn't posted on any of the websites. But clearly he established a good relationship with him really quickly. I know Murray was really, he really liked what he saw at the new indoor facility that was opened and everything like that. And, I think that, that was a big part of why he flipped. I think there might be some immediate playing time in there as well. And I mean, look, 6'4", 300 pounds, this is the type of size that you want to have on an offensive lineman, particularly an interior offensive lineman coming into college. I mean, this guy played all over the offensive line. He played center almost exclusively his senior year of high school. And Mack Brown told Inside Carolina earlier this week that he was still looking for that Jeff Saturday type center. This might be the guy later on down the line. And so it's huge to bring him in, adds another good guy to the class who now, this class is up to 36th according to 24/7 Sports in the country. Remember, there was a time right after Larry Fedora left and we started seeing some guys decommit. This class got all the way to 91st in the nation, and now they are 36th. So what a fantastic turnaround. One of the things, I wanted to ask you this, and really this is something that we didn't see under Larry Fedora. They really have focused on the defensive side of the football, especially late on in this class. The late signing period, I think, is really going to be focused on bringing in some athletic linebackers, a lot of athletic safeties as well, guys that can play sideline to sideline. That's pretty much what Jay Bateman's defense thrives off of. That's got to be refreshing, right? Because we've seen for so many years the defensive struggles from Larry Fedora, but he just hasn't recruited the talent or depth on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, that's always been the one thing that has plagued his team. Before the last 2 years, they had no problem putting 40 up on a given Saturday.
Right.
It was a problem of not giving up 40
Yeah.
I mean, yep. I love watching points, but like as a fan, I want to see my team stop somebody at some point. And for almost a decade, we never saw that. you know, you look at some of the bowl games and stuff like that. You've seen these teams that run high-powered offenses. Texas, their defense shut down a Georgia team. Defense played great. You know, you looked at what Clemson did defensively to Alabama, not only on offense, but defensively just beat them up. We've never been deep, and we've never really been as physical as, you know, I think I want my team to be. And the speed on this, you know, especially from the linebacker position, hasn't been there since Butch Davis was here. And so hopefully we get back to seeing guys that can flow from one side of the field to the other and make plays. And, yeah, I mean, I'm really excited. I really think, you know, I think we're going to score like we're used to scoring, but I think we're going to get to that point where we're holding teams to 24 points and under. And if Phil Longo's offense is half as successful as it was at Ole Miss, we're going to win a lot of ball games.
Well, I put the poll out earlier this month. I think it was actually back in December, but you saw it, and there were some interesting questions in there. That was coming from you, so I really thank you on that, buddy. I think I'm a genius, but that's something for a different time, I guess. I mean, but one of the things, and someone pointed this out, the fans said that they do think we will hold them to 25 to 30 points a game this season, but that we will score 25 to 30 points this season. So apparently a lot of nail biters, like one of the guys pointed out on Twitter. I would love to get back down underneath that 30-point mark because each of the last two seasons we have been above that. So, I think if they can get back into that area, and look, you're not going to be able to stop teams. I mean, trust me, there are a few teams out there that are able to hold teams under 20 points. It's only a handful. I think this year, if I remember correctly, it was, I think, around 16, maybe 15 teams in the entire country that held opponents to under 20 points a game. So the game of football has just changed. You know that people are going to put up points on you. They're going to put up yards on you. But, we got to get back to what we saw, at least we got to get back to what we saw under Gene Chizik. If you're going to let up yards, you have got to create turnovers. The turnovers disappeared from this team starting in the 2016 season, which was Gene Chizik's last year. And it was shocking. One interception the whole season. And that really, we've never recovered from that. We need to be that team that can force turnovers if we're not going to stop you, or you got to be that team that says, hey, look, you're not going to run or throw on us. We're going to slow you down. I mean, yeah, you got to limit the points to a certain extent in one way or the other. So they got to figure that out. And, Jay Bateman looks for these athletic guys. Again, he hasn't always thrived off of turnovers, but I'll tell you one thing about his Army teams. They do not miss a lot of tackles. They know where they have to be, and they know that, look, wherever I'm at, I better take the right angle and make the tackle. Because if I don't, then I'm going to pay for it. And, that's the kind of mindset that you have to take here. And look, that's why you want to start getting some of this depth going. We've had to leave some of these guys out on the field the last few seasons because, honestly, the guys behind them aren't experienced enough to come in. If you can start to build that experience and that depth, then you can say, look, man, you've had a bad game. We're going to pull you off and put someone else in there and see if we can't get a guy that's playing a little bit better than you that fits this defense just a little bit more. So I'm interested to see, if they can start getting some of those guys that can cover those sideline to sideline areas that you need your linebackers to cover, especially in the ACC and especially whenever we play Pittsburgh. I am tired of that jet sweep working against us. We've seen that for how many years? That game right there will probably show you whether or not there's been a change on this defense. When you look at the late signing period, there are going to be a few positions in need, mostly on the defensive side of the football. I think now with Murray being picked up at the offensive guard position, I think the offense is pretty much set in stone. We don't need a quarterback, running back, loaded, wide receiver. We're stacked there as well. Brought in 4 wide receivers in the early signing period. So those seem to be off the table. Tight end as well because Brandon Fritz returning. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then they add Kamari Morales to the group as well. So really, I guess when you look at the defensive side of the football, what is the area that you think Carolina really needs to focus on in this late signing period? Or maybe what is that area that you think they need to bring someone in before they close this class down on February 6th?
Got to get bigger, faster, stronger, deeper in the back seven. I saw the projected or the amount of people we can have in our front four. I saw one of these guys tweet it out today, and there's a very long list of capable players. So but really, you want depth in the trenches on both sides, and then, like I said, I think the linebacker position needs an overhaul. You're losing your most sure tackler in Cole Holcomb, who was a walk-on. So,
right.
Jonathan Smith hasn't been what he was supposed to be, and some of the other guys, really since Shotburn, Shaquille Rashad, we've just haven't been very strong at that position.
Right.
And then the back seven, whether it's because we are going to play a different style, you're going to recruit that style of player now with the aggressiveness at the corner, and then, the more
hybrid safeties.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of the things we're definitely going to see.
So that's where I think you'll see them targeting the most, because we are looking to bring in a different type of player at those two positions than what we had for the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, safety, I think, is going to be that spot. The guy to keep an eye on is Don Chapman, who comes out of San Diego, California. He's going to be a guy that I think really fits what Jay Bateman likes to do. Athletic guy, a guy that can kind of play, either that safety role or come up and play that linebacker role that Jay Bateman's going to like from his hybrids. I think that's one of the areas, because you look at the safety position now, and there are not many guys left with J.K. Britt graduating, and there's some walk-ons that graduated back there as well. The back four, that secondary is really thin now with depth, really thin. I mean, you're talking pretty much Miles Dorn, Miles Woolfolk, and who was I'm blanking on who the other person was at the moment on that back seven. But I mean, they're going to have to do something back there at that safety position, especially because, that safety position is not going to disappear. Yeah, you're going to turn one of them into a hybrid, but let's be really honest. I mean, Larry Fedora didn't list it as a hybrid position, but pretty much Donnie Miles and J.K. Britt were used mostly as run-stopping safeties. These guys weren't the greatest in pass coverage. I mean, I thought J.K. Britt was an improvement, not by much. The other guy's going to be DJ Ford. That's right. He got some experience this year as well. But, I mean, I'm just looking at it. Then you're going to start to get to guys like Graham Euclid, who was a junior college transfer last year, didn't play for most of this year for Carolina, may have played a little bit of a role on special teams. And then Drew Homchek, who was a walk-on from Wake Forest High School in North Carolina, but wasn't a guy that received an offer. I don't even think he was a preferred walk-on. So you're going to have to move some of the other guys, too. I think Javon Terry was a guy that can play either corner or safety, so they might have to move him back. And, they're going to have to be some other guys. I mean, Greg Ross, I know, played it a little bit in high school. I think he was a safety, and he could lay the boom in high school. Now, we've seen him at corner. The results are hit or miss. He had some moments where he looked good. He had some moments where he really struggled. But if they had to end up moving him, I don't think that would necessarily be the worst thing. But that's why I think it's so important. And a guy like Don Chapman, I think, could really ease some of the concern back there. And that's one of the areas. And again, linebacker, I'm with you, because I said that before last season. You remember me saying that. Linebacker depth is going to be a concern. And, you bring in Kadri Jackson to this group, the outside linebacker. He'll come in. And then I know they're bringing in as well, one of the guys that enrolled early is Parks Cochran, who comes from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. But he's going to be a preferred walk-on as well. He doesn't end up getting a scholarship, so it's like, okay, well, what are we really getting in these guys? And, I think ultimately there is enough there. I wouldn't be overly concerned at linebacker. I'd be a little more concerned at safety, because you can barely fill out the 2 deep at this point. But yeah, I'd say that safety position is the place you got to get. But don't be shocked if they do go and bring in a linebacker. So I think from there, we'll get to see some of these guys probably on display. Maybe even some of these guys, that will be, that have already enrolled. We'll see some of the guys that sign in the late signing period. They're going to have to wait until the fall to get on campus. So you won't see those guys that we were just talking about a minute ago. But the spring game officially announced for April 13th. back in Kenan Stadium. The first time they're going to be in Kenan since 2016. As you know, of course, 2017 they had to play it in Fetzer because they were working on Kenan. And then 2018 they just didn't have a spring game. So, I think there's going to be a little excitement to be back in the seats at Kenan, be able to watch a little bit of football in April, something we haven't really done in a while. And, of course, Mack Brown has said he wants to turn this into an event. I mean, I'm pretty excited. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be excited to go out there and potentially see some of these great battles work themselves out in the spring game, or maybe not work themselves out. A lot of these battles I feel like will extend over into fall camp, but you'll get to see, what the true freshman Sam Howell has, and, that quarterback battle should still be right in the thick of things when that spring game rolls around. You would imagine that there'll be some battles at the wide receiver position, and the entire defense, I think, is pretty much almost up for grabs, maybe outside of a couple defensive line spots. So, is there some excitement, at least from your perspective, when it comes to the fact that the spring game will be back this year and in Kenan Stadium?
Yeah, and I might be wrong about this. Don't think I am, because I'm hardly ever wrong.
Wow. Dude, the arrogance in this podcast. By the way, we are just joking about this. We do not think that we are the greatest things to walk this earth in when it comes to Carolina athletics.
I think if Mack Brown was to vision what this would look like, and in my head when I heard he wanted to turn this into an event for recruiting and the fans, he wants to mirror what we have with Late Night with Roy, where it's you're kind of, even though this won't kick off the season, but you're going to be in the stadium where we play, and it's just going to be fun. Like, I know under Larry it was kind of, you didn't know how they were keeping score. You didn't. It was.
Please
just,
tell me they are going back to Mac. If you listen to this podcast by any chance, which is no chance in hell, please go back to the regular scoring, because no one on this planet could keep up with what the scoring was for Larry Fedora. Dude, wasn't there one point where he just gave out points if he thought they made a good play or something like that? I mean, it made no sense.
So that's what I think he's hoping for. You hope it's great weather because you can show off the recruit. Look, this is what Chapel Hill is when the sun is shining and it's 70 degrees and the wind's blowing. Make it fun for the fans with probably like a fan fest and maybe a chance for us to interact with the coaches and the players even before Meet the Heels, which would be later in the year. But that's what I think is his ultimate goal, is to just make it for people like you and I. If we drive 2.5 hours, make it worth our time.
Right.
Because before then, it was never really worth our time to drive 2.5 hours because we didn't know how close we were going to get to the action, whether we were going to see battles. And look, maybe you have the spring game, but you also do some fun competitions, the late night they have the skills competition, or they play just some stupid games or make the players dance. Just make it fun for the little kids and for the people that are there to work, also just to enjoy their time there. And I think that's what it'll evolve to, because I think he understands how important recruiting is. So anything you can make it to advanced recruiting, he's going to. So I think the spring game is going to be a success in many different ways.
Yeah, I think definitely having it back in Kenan and everything like that will definitely liven it up a little bit. I want to see him return to, some of the spring games that they had early on in the Larry Fedora era, and even in that 2016 season where, look, you're out here playing a game, but at the same time, it's a scrimmage. Have a little bit of fun with it. When you score a touchdown, let's do some dances in the end zone. Let's have a little fun with it, because the referees are not, clearly they're going to throw pass interference flags and everything like that because they're going to try to make it as realistic as possible. But at the same time, look, you're out here to have a little bit of fun as well. It's the end of spring camp. And come out here and show what you got while, having a little bit of fun with your teammates. That's going to be the key. And, I'm kind of with you. Make it a lively environment for the fan base. If the fan base can show out and really have a good showing there, that would be encouraging. I mean, trust me. No one's expecting that the stadium's going to be full. It almost never happens. In some of the big-time college football areas, like Ohio State, Nebraska. Okay, Nebraska, they live and breathe football. Literally, they don't do anything else out there. Football and corn, that's the only thing they do out in Nebraska. So, I don't expect it to be packed to the brim, but at the same time, it would be nice to see Kenan full again. This one, I wouldn't be shocked if one of the ESPN networks picks it up just because it is Mack Brown as well, and you're going to have a guy in Sam Howell, pretty good quarterback race that I think will be talked about because of Howell, because he was a 4-star recruit. So, I think there will be a really good chance to, get Carolina back in the spotlight here just a little bit, even coming off a 2-9 season. Maybe that's the chance to show out, and I think it could end up being a really great event. So, anything else you wanna talk through before we hit this new segment that we're gonna do at the end here?
No, I'm good.
All right, man. So we turn to what we're gonna call the 40-yard dash. I gotta give you credit on this. You were the one that did come up with the name of this because the name that we had before was not good. Was terrible. So you came up with the 40-yard dash. We're just gonna kind of run through the other storylines that we got going on for the Carolina football team. Some of the, loose ends that really, didn't deserve an entire segment, but still deserve to be talked about just a little bit. And we'll start Malik Carney and Cole Holcomb, two former Tar Heel players, that are going to the NFL because both of those guys, of course, did graduate. They began Shrine Bowl practices today. I saw Joe Marino was writing some reports from out there. One of the great guys that covers the draft. He actually lives right here in Charlotte and does a great job covering most of the ACC and SEC teams. And he was down there watching both the East and West practice out there in St. Petersburg. He did not mention either Malik Carney or Cole Holcomb from what I could see, but these guys, of course, both getting underway. The Shrine Bowl, or the Shrine Game, Shrine Bowl is the high school game that they play down in Spartanburg. The Shrine Game, probably the second most well-regarded of the, what will we call these? I guess like pre-draft bowls, because you got the Senior Bowl, of course, down in Mobile, Alabama, and then the Shrine Bowl, which is in St. Petersburg. So both of those guys got their invitations and accepted them. And they started those practices today. The new indoor practice facility, of course, opened over the weekend, and they will be able to use that for the entirety of spring practice. Now, the outdoor field that they're going to use has not been finished at the time, so they unfortunately are going to have to use Keenan again for a little while. They do expect that to be built hopefully by the time that fall camp rolls around, but they don't think it's going to be fully ready for spring camp. So there still will be some practices, mostly the outdoor ones in Keenan, but I think a lot of the stuff will be done indoors this year as opposed to, every practice being in Keenan, tearing up the turf. And we saw how bad the turf looked towards the end of the season. The other day they showed the turf that they had rolled out for the junior day and the official visits, and it looked pretty good. Keenan looked pretty good. So the grounds crew doing a great job there. It'll help that they don't have to practice there for the entire season. Brandon Fritz officially announces that he will return to Chapel Hill. He announced that on Tuesday night. So that means that Carolina will return all their scholarship tight ends from last year. Also add Kamari Morales. Fritz, a guy that, really just 47 receptions, 439 yards so far in his career, but he does have 8 career touchdowns. So add a red zone threat back to the group. Tar Heels do lose two players that really, didn't have too much experience. They both transferred to FCS programs. Offensive lineman Tyler Pritchett announced that he will transfer to Jacksonville State. Played a little bit last year, not a ton at offensive guard, and also saw some time at center when there were some injuries to starting center J.J. McCargo and then the backup center Jonathan Trull. And Caleb Rosar, that's one that really hurts, though. A guy that really, he hadn't played really his entire career. Maybe saw a few snaps on special teams, but was a guy that was expected to be in the hunt for a backup safety spot. He ends up transferring. He's going to go to Alabama State. And there are 6 guys that will enroll early and will participate in spring camp. 7 if you count Parks Cochran, who comes in, the preferred walk-on, who will join the group. Emory Simmons, the 3-star wide receiver from Southview High School, will right here in North Carolina. He will be one of the guys on campus. Storm Duck, who comes from Boiling Springs High School down in South Carolina. He will also be with the group. Sam Howell, of course, the 4-star pro-style quarterback will come in. He'll immediately begin his battle with Cade Fortin and Jace Ruder. You'll have Wyatt Tunall, the offensive tackle, big, tall, lengthy guy that played at Chester High School, who just won their state championship in the state of South Carolina. Kadri Jackson, he'll come up from Windermere Prep in Windermere, Florida, and he's expected to be one of those guys that will play either outside linebacker or could slot into that hybrid spot. So a big guy to get in there early and get a little bit of experience in that Jay Bateman defense under his belt. And then Brant Lawless, of course, the guy that was in the 2018 class, signed with Tennessee, then asked for his release last July. Of course, we all remember tried to enroll at Carolina last year, unfortunately wasn't allowed to. He enrolls this year, and now he will be a full participant in spring camp. And this is big-bodied guy at the defensive tackle position, a space eater, something that we really haven't had inside. And yes, so while he won't have that much experience, there is a lot of talent there, former 4-star, so we'll see exactly what he can do. Any other loose ends you want to tie up there, buddy?
I think I'm good for the night.
All right, man. So, as always, you guys can follow him on Twitter at Joshua Marlowe 5. Go ahead and check out the Roy's Boys podcast. That one, just about the same spots that you can find this podcast. This one, you can find Spreaker, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn.com, or the TuneIn app. That one, you can find Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, as well as not iHeartRadio yet, but what? I'm blanking on the other one that we had it on. Was there another one? I thought.
What did you say?
I had iHeartRadio, what a finish to the show, by the way. Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And then was there not another one? Maybe we're just...
No, I think that's it.
I think we're overthinking it. So there you go. We'll probably just delete this part out of the podcast, but we may leave it in because, well, you know, we're far from professionals when it comes to this. But you guys can subscribe to that. Go ahead to, go check out Medium.com. Got the Heel Tough blog. That's the blog that I write about Carolina football. We'll have some great stuff going on up there. Going to write a little bit more about Tyler Pritchett and Caleb Rozar transferring out of Carolina. And then we'll continue to keep you updated on anything that goes on when it comes to the late signing period. Got, a list of guys to keep an eye on in the late signing period up there. Also, if you want to go back and check out, the article on Sam Howell and his performance at the the U.S. Army All-American game. We are trying to get Ross Tucker, who covered the game for NBC, on the podcast. We'll see if we can't get him on to talk a little bit about our future quarterback and see what he thinks about his potential future and whether or not he can get in to Chapel Hill and potentially win the job with him coming in spring. And you can check out the Roy's Boys blog as well. You got some great stuff going on there as we go throughout the season. Of course, he'll continue to preview and recap games. There'll be some other feature articles, especially when we get around that time when we play the Duke Blue Devils. There are going to be some great feature articles on that about that fantastic rivalry. So I want to thank you guys for listening as always. And remember, as always, go Tar Heels!